Welcome to Rubber Band Live, the Australian recruitment and talent acquisition vodcast and podcast. I am Eden Haddock, your host and the creator of Rubber Band, the recruitment network for all. Let's go live. And we are live. Welcome listeners and welcome viewers to today's episode of Rubber Band Live, which is personality insights to drive performance, engagement and retention with Peter Treloar from TALY. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the land and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So, welcome, Peter Treloar. Welcome to Rubber Band Live. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. It's good to be here. I just realized, though, you're not wearing the fancy suit that you were wearing yesterday that you posted on LinkedIn. So I'm a bit bummed about that. But apart from that, I'm super excited to be here.
Do you know what, mate? And look, thanks for noticing. I've got this thing where I'm craving the old school attire, and apparently it's becoming quite trendy again for for all genders to be wearing suits. Like the power suit is coming back, so bring back the
80s,
the double-breasted. Yeah. I'm for it. Like I felt like on top of the world, like I was conquering the world yesterday in my power suit.
Yeah,
bring
you
it
looked pretty sharp. You looked pretty sharp. It was good.
There'll be something in my personality that will be the reason why. But we'll talk about that in a moment.
Sure. Yeah,
excellent. And thank you so much. We've even had a comment already from Mike Crompton that he wants to do it. So Mike, it's all yours. I'll lend it to you anytime. Anyone that is actually watching the stream today live, please do say hello in the comment box. Ask any questions along the way. We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for joining in today. Now, where I always love to start, Peter, I've only met you recently in the last couple of months, and it's been an absolute delight meeting you. And I'm assuming a lot of people out there that are listening and watching haven't met you yet. So why don't we start hearing all about you? Tell us, who is Peter? Tell me about your career, all those wonderful things that make up Peter Treloar.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Well, I've had, I guess I've had a pretty mixed bag of a background. My original plan after high school was to get to be a jazz musician. So I played jazz piano for a long time. I was in bands and doing lots of things, and then quickly realized there's not much of a career being a musician. You're pretty unlikely to make it. And then I ended up moving into hospitality and tourism and did my master's in wine tourism for a while, and then was going to work in tourism, and then realized pretty quickly, again, there's not a lot of careers or high-paying careers in tourism. But then I guess from my career perspective, always based in Melbourne. And then after doing my master's, I kind of fell in love with just research and data, and sort of doing studies and really getting data and trying to use that to understand the puzzle that is people, and ended up getting into the market research industry for a really long time. So doing a lot of brand and ad research, and working for really big brands like CUB and just huge companies to help them work out how to sell more stuff to customers, and was doing that for a really long time. And then in about 2012 kind of got the bug for doing my own thing, like running my own business. So I started doing my own consulting work. I opened up a venue in South Bank called The Meadow, which is a really cool workshop space and research space for a long time. Wow. Got involved in building software and building lots of apps and doing lots of other bits and pieces, but still sort of staying in the research world for a long time. And then sort of slowly transitioned, taking all of the clever stuff that we knew about how to build brands and communication, and starting to taking that into internal branding, like EVP work, internal culture, building stories, building communications channels, all of that kind of stuff. And then from there, sort of, I guess, started playing in the HR space, and that's kind of when TALY came to life.
Excellent. I can't wait to hear about TALY, but I'm going to ask you a question. Do you still play jazz in your spare time? Like, are you still a creator? You do?
Yeah, I love it. I sort of don't play nearly as much as I want to, and my piano at the moment is not very good, and a couple of the keys don't work. But my kids, I've got 3 kids, and they all play now as well, and we love getting into music. It's my fun thing to do. I really enjoy it.
Well, I've got a side hustle for you because you actually look like Harry Connick Jr. So I reckon you could do the RSL
Yeah,
circuit and you could do
sure.
the Harry Connick Jr. experience, right? I
That's a
think there's
great
money,
idea. That's
right?
a great idea. Yeah, we'll workshop it afterwards today and see how it goes. That's a great
Yeah, I
idea.
reckon. I reckon. But look, we're not here to talk about the Harry Connick
Connick
Jr.
Jr. Yeah.
experience. We're here to talk about TALY. So tell me, what is TALY? What is it all about? And I'm
Yeah.
really curious to know, you're moving into HR industry and why you've decided to go down the path of personality profiling. So tell me about all of that.
Yeah, for sure. It was just kind of a luck meeting, just sort of like discovering the world of personality. And I think, coming from market research, which wasn't the coolest industry, into personality profiling, which maybe also isn't the coolest space to play in, is just sort of where I've ended up falling into. But I guess we were doing a lot of work in internal culture and branding and understanding people. And like I said, my background was all in research. So just taking data, like complicated data, and turning it into simple answers. And the more time I started then spending in HR, I kind of was exposed to the world of personality profiling and psychometrics through a few different people, and starting to get my nerd on and get into what it all means, and the evidence of how much it's linked to behavior, and how much we can really understand people by just like getting right down into the core of who they are and their personality traits and what makes them tick. And I guess pretty quickly realizing that that really great data can really help people understand each other better, and can build empathy, and can ultimately just make people feel happier at work. But but I guess a lot of businesses aren't using it, and a lot of businesses weren't using it in the right way or to its fullest potential. And I guess the more I got into understanding the impact that it can have, the more I kind of wanted to help solve the problem of just getting that really great data and just getting it to people in a way that they could actually do something with it. And that's kind of what TALY was all about originally.
Right, fantastic. So, if TALY is and personality profiling is going to be, I guess, a solution to many problems that organizations are facing in terms of their people and their culture and their hiring strategy, engagement, retention, performance, all of those kind of things. Like, in your opinion, so 2023, like what are the key people challenges in more detail? Like, what are you seeing out there in the market where people perhaps are struggling, or perhaps what's the environment like right now?
Yeah, I think it's a really tricky time. We're out talking to people every day, and having lots of conversations, from startups through to big corporates to recruiters or people in TA or HR leaders or business leaders. And I think the main takeout right now is that there is no one problem that businesses are facing. Like, normally you see things come in trends and waves, like everyone's kind of recruiting or everyone's not recruiting, or tech sector's growing or tech sector's not growing, whatever it might be. Like, there's trends. And I feel like now it's actually each business is sort of dealing with its own problems. And you can go and talk to one consultancy and they're booming, and the next one who does almost the same thing and they're not. And they're having their own individualized people problems, or they're having their own environmental, corporate environment problems, or whatever it might be. And I think the challenge for businesses right now is that there's a whole lot of uncertainty about what's happening. There's a little bit of a lack of confidence in the way things are going, and things kind of keep changing really, really fast.
Yeah.
And people are trying to work out how to sort of build individualized solutions that kind of suit their business, but are kind of trying to do it with big blunt tools, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying it's about personality or aptitude or the right HRIS or whatever it might be. It's like people are just being overwhelmed with lots of different solutions, lots of different options, lots of different ways to solve problems. And the complexity for people in this space is trying to work out which solution's actually going to line up with their problem, and understand their people as humans. And I think the other side of it is also that post-COVID, people are like evaluating things differently. People want different things out of life. People want different things out of work. People are judging roles and offers and money and thinking about things in a really different way. And I don't think that's settled down just yet. So I think people are there's like this big whirlwind of people trying to work out what the world currently looks like now, and at the same time, lots of change happening. And so people are trying to work out what to stick, but what was right this week might not be right next week. So it's kind of a complicated time, I think, for a lot of businesses right now, which maybe sounds a bit doom and gloom. Do you agree? Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And look, I've just noticed we've got a really chatty audience today as well. So I'd love to hear from the audience what your key people challenges are at the moment as well. So please pop that up. And I'm losing my voice today. I do apologize. But yeah, please pop up in the chat box some of your key people challenges, and we'll have a conversation around that. But what you said that's really interesting to me, because what I have noticed is, from a candidate perspective, if we're talking candidates, is that people post-COVID are very drawn to an organization's purpose, very drawn to social responsibility, all of those things. What does the organization stand for, and how do they give to society? But we have this massive financial crisis going on. But I haven't seen that trend that we had a little while ago, probably 18 months ago, where everyone was just chasing salaries. And I'm surprised that hasn't happened. Like, why do you think that hasn't happened? Or do you think it may happen at any stage?
I just think people are valuing life and time a little bit differently. I think, there's a real reflection on what family means and what life means. There is that focus on purpose. And I think there's also an idea that nothing's permanent. So, there is this, we've seen it for a long time in recruitment and in workplaces, that people are a lot more transient than they used to be, and your portfolio career and doing side hustles and all of those kind of macro trends just mean that people, they want to feel fulfilled in the thing they're doing right now, and can chase money later, or can chase money now and then become fulfilled for a little while later, or try and find both of those things. So I think people are trying to stick a couple of different things together. And, when we see it with a 4-day work week and working from home and hybrid working, and, people working in a couple of different jobs, and like I was saying, the portfolio careers, I think, people are just reevaluating what the material things are that matter to them, and it's not just cash. And also when you just realize you're never going to be able to buy a house, or you're never going to be able to pay off your mortgage, maybe you stop worrying about money so much and try to have a little bit of fun at the same time.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Charlotte, thank you. Charlotte Hall has just shared a comment that she's finding a higher volume of candidates unhappy at work, due to toxic workplaces. So it's actually the environment and the culture is that driver to move on, not the high salary. We've also had a really great question come through from Mike Crompton. Thank you so much for sharing. But curious from Mike in terms of how you would introduce the benefits of profiling to a company that maybe just has that bums on seats mentality, that it doesn't, it's all about just bringing someone in to do a task, and that culture that Charlotte talked about as being, so important to individuals at the moment in terms of either leaving an organization or joining. How could you, I guess, shift the mindset of those kind of organizations?
Yeah, I think, they're both really good questions. It's kind of, for me personally, that was the whole reason why we got into the personality space in the first place. Just knowing that during interviews, if I can understand you as a human a little bit more and what makes you tick, and if I can be honest about who I am as a hiring manager and what makes me tick, and we can have a little bit more of an open conversation about what's going to make me happier and you happier at work, then we'll kind of get to a better place. And when I was first exploring the world of personality and got exposed to it and looking at the research, you could see it's not just about, finding the right person who's going to turn up to work on time and not steal money or whatever it might be, the really basic things. It's really about, we know that if we understand people, we can empathize with them. If we can empathize with them, we can build the right culture for them. And if we build the right culture, even if it is a bums on seats kind of role, they'll stay longer, they'll be happier, they'll tell their friends about it, they'll recommend new employees, you'll have less absenteeism, you'll have, just stronger performance, more optional output, all of those things just kind of come to life. And, so if there are businesses that kind of think about it transactionally, just think about it, I don't want to make a bad hire, then that's one way of using personality. But if you go beyond that and say, like a workplace is culture built up of humans who are just trying to get along and have a nice time together and get somewhere positive, then that's kind of where personality profiling can come into it as well. And we do see that, like, it's a really weird space to be playing in. There are so many preconceptions about profiling, either that it works or it doesn't work, or that it's just a point in time kind of thing. And we think about 80% of businesses aren't using any profiling at the moment, any personality data to make decisions. But without, there are so many little flow-on benefits, like I was just going through. Without any data, it's really hard to make those decisions and to get it right. And kind of going back to what we were talking about in terms of like people kind of wanting that individualized work experience, or, getting out of toxic cultures or whatever it might be. Often those toxic cultures aren't a product of people wanting to be mean to each other. Like, no one goes to work wanting to be unproductive, and no one goes to work wanting to be mean to somebody else. Hopefully not. I mean, maybe there are some people who do, but hopefully there aren't too many. Yeah. I mean, maybe we have worked in those workplaces in the past, but but it's kind of true that, people want to have a nice experience and they kind of want to be productive. Like, it's just the self-determination theory. And often the problems of toxicity or poor alignment or whatever it might be just come from misunderstanding. It's just we don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to have a language around differences. We don't know how to approach those conversations to talk about differences in the first place. There's just a lack of information and language to sort of bridge those gaps. And I think that's my feeling is that's the cause of a lot of the issues.
Yeah, which is really interesting from a comment that Eric had shared as well, in terms of leaders being trained to work with neurodiversity. Eric, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's, neurodiversity is definitely a part of this, but it's beyond that. It's leaders not being trained to understand their people, and not being able to understand how to get those insights and to make those environments right for the individual. And neurodiversity definitely plays a part in that. And Eric, thank you so much, all the way from Launceston as well. Eric, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think that's a really great comment.
Yeah, it is. If I'll just pick up on the diversity point quickly. I think workplaces are becoming more diverse, which is great, and particularly neurodiversity, but any other kind of diversity. And the flip side of things becoming more diversity is that as humans, I mean, we all kind of know this, as humans, we're kind of tribal animals, and we're trained to find things that are similar to us because they're safe. And we're trained to find things that are different to us as a threat. And, and in recruitment, if you're having a conversation with someone and they have a similar personality to you and they agree with you and you have a really nice chat and you're like, oh, this must be a really good person, I'm going to hire them. And then you hire the same person over and over again, or you actually become your bias kicks in and you actually don't even realize that they're not a good fit for the role, but you just kind of like them. And so you hire them. And then when you're actually talking to someone who's very different to you, you just find it really hard. Like, it's a really tricky thing for leaders who are, like, from recruitment or through to team management. They're really busy. They've got lots of things going on. They're running from interview to interview and then back to their normal job. And then at the same time, they have to challenge their brain to start thinking differently all of a sudden. It's really complicated. So it's not an easy time to be trying to support diversity.
Well, I want to go a little bit deeper into personality profiling, because, as recruiters, and most of our audience are recruitment or HR, obviously, there are so many different skills assessments out there, and it can become a little bit of a jungle and a little bit confusing as to what does what and what the outcomes are of all of those different assessments. So how does it differ to other skills assessments? Like, what is it? How is it different from all the other ones that we see out there?
Yeah, totally. So you're not wrong. There are a lot of assessments out there, and they're of really differing quality. They're of different and lots of different purposes that they serve. I think there are probably the easiest ways to think about them are point in time versus overtime assessments. So point in time might be like a skills assessment where you're just trying to judge someone's ability or aptitude in a certain role, or just their general aptitude, and understand how, like, what level of skill that they are today in that area that you're looking at. And that can be really helpful, just to understand, if I put this person into the role today, are they going to be able to do the things that I'm asking them to do? How much help are they going to need? How much training are they going to need? How much money do I invest in upskilling them? All of those kind of things. So those kind of assessments can be really helpful. There are also assessments which are things like Strength Finder and those kind of ones, which aren't necessarily getting down to your personality, but they are just sort of understanding your work styles or your motivations, or and they're simply like, you're more like this and less like this. So if I talk to you, you're going to be more extroverted than introverted. You're going to be more driven than flexible, whatever it might be. And so they're not necessarily trying to get right down to your underlying personality, but they're just trying to say, if I'm in a conversation with you, how might you act? Or if I'm leading you, how might you act? Or if we're going through a change process, how might you behave? Or just to try to understand the direction. And a lot of that's usually just then working out a right way to build team connection and communication and leadership of that person as well. And then you go sort of down towards the further end, which is the personality space where we play, which is really trying to get right down into the underlying personality dimensions and traits that kind of exist within you that are enduring. So we think that most personality, like when you get right down to the deep personality traits, most of it's kind of fixed from your genetics and your early childhood. And throughout your adult life, it doesn't really change. And there's sort of some core dimensions that sort of sit inside you, and they don't tell us how you'll behave in every situation, but they sort of they give the direction about how you're likely to behave in different situations. And those kind of measurement tools are different to the others that we were just talking about, because they're more enduring. So if I measure you today and I measure you from 5 years from now, you'll still have the same personality. It's unlikely to change. So if you don't like it, bad luck. Or if you are happy with it, then that's great. And I can just keep using that information over and over again just to work out how you're likely to behave in different situations and how you're likely to connect with other people.
Like I'm thinking of it from my perspective. Like it's really interesting when you're talking about, your personality doesn't change. It's something that is inbuilt, it's ingrained. And, I think we make a lot of false assumptions, whether it's in the workplace or just in society general, around personality. And I'll use myself as an example. I mean, people think that I am an extrovert, whereas I'm actually really quite introverted. I prefer my own company, and I do suffer some anxiety. So, when I attend a working event, or, if I need to be in a room full of people, and people are surprised because I do a lot of facilitation where I have to actually be in that environment, right? But I do suffer anxiety, and my personality is actually quite introverted. So, I can imagine the benefits of personality profile, because you're getting deeper into what people are projecting. Is that a benefit as well for leaders and for organizations to look beyond what someone is presenting in front of them?
Totally. Yeah. Honestly, that's what it's all about. So the more we can sort of unpeel those layers that sit on top of you, of your like persona, your colorful background, and your spotted shirt that you're wearing right now, which feels very extroverted. And we kind of get down to what your core behavior actually is like. Then we can sort of then try to understand how to manage you in the best way, or how to connect with you in the best way. Because the more time you spend acting and operating in an environment that aligns with your natural personality, the more energy you'll have. So if you're a naturally extroverted person and you're by yourself all the time, then you run out of energy, and then you're not as productive. And the more we can align people to their own personality strengths, the better the outcomes. One thing to keep in mind, and I think this is a really important thing, is that personality, or whatever metrics you're using, are one part of the story. And so with any person, you've got your personality that sits at the heart of who they are, but then you've also got their mindset that sits around that. You've got all of their learned behaviors, you've got their history, you've got your the situation that they're in, you've got their motivations, you've got their values. There's lots of different things. Like, people are really complex, and the more we can kind of play with that puzzle and really try to understand what's going on, the better we'll be. We had someone a little while ago who was working for a big charity, and they just sort of moved into a leadership position. And they, when we profiled them, they had a really lovely, generous, highly emotionally intelligent, empathetic personality. But in work, they were real, I'm not sure if we're allowed to swear, but they weren't a very nice person. Like, they were uncomfortable with some of their reports. And this coach that we were working with, who then took the profile and had a conversation with them, was able to unpick that the reason they were acting like that was just because they had had a few managers before them who acted like that. And they just thought, if you're a manager, that's how you behave. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So their natural personality wasn't to be mean to people, or to be a real hard ass when they're bossing people around. But they just, and then as soon as you could unpick that and go, this is kind of what you're naturally like, this is how we can bring that to life and work for you. And then all of a sudden there's this relief, and they're like, oh, finally people see me. They understand what I'm like. I get to actually behave how I'd like to, because that person's going home every night feeling like not a great person either. So it's really just like, how do we just use this data, whether it's personality or values or motivations, and just try to, reflect on who we are as humans, and then just have a conversation about that and use that in the right way at work. Because if we align people to their natural personalities, then they'll be happier.
Yeah. And I think being curious about people is really important from a leadership perspective, and understanding what these insights can bring from a personality perspective. And I really love what Charlotte has shared here in terms of leaders having that natural interest in people that perhaps differ to them, and that, great leaders actually really do seek that out, getting a deeper understanding of their people, and people with different personalities or different strengths or different approaches or different styles, for example.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's a great point.
It is a great point. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Now, we talk quite a lot about candidate experience and employee experience. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in our industry is, look, I can't swear either, but quite often it's not very good because it's very out of the box. It's very generic. It doesn't have personalization. We're communicating with our candidates and our employees in a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. So tell me, hyper-personalized communication, we know that's the key. And we know that will have an impact on our candidate and employee experience. So how can we use personality profiling to do that better? Like, how could that play a part in candidate and employee experience?
Yeah, totally. So I guess, that's why now is a really exciting time to be playing with any kind of data tool, like particularly like personality profiling. Like, we know you need to start with good data at the start of it, but with a lot of the developments now in AI and machine learning and generative AI, we're able to build to take the data from your personality and to understand the individual company's culture and the position that they're applying for and the leader that they're working with and everything else, like all of those other inputs, and build really hyper-personalized experiences for candidates and for leaders, like through recruitment. And I think, there's just really, really simple examples that we use. Like, if you think about onboarding as an example, most companies have exactly the same onboarding experience, or maybe like slight variations. And, we'll have 10,000 employees. They'll all come in, they'll do these 4 things for the first week and these 4 things for the second week. But if you're like, you said you're an introvert. If your first week is full of meetings, lunches, conversations, you'll enjoy it, but you'll get pretty tired, and you'll go home at the end of day. You'll go home at the end of day 1. You'll be like, that was fun. I'm just a bit worn out though, and I've got to get up and do that again tomorrow. And and all of a sudden, day 1 is your peak engagement moment. Like, that's when you're like, this is going to be great. I'm going to do lots of things. I'm really excited about this new opportunity. And then you go home and you're hanging out with your partner and you're just a bit worn out. They're like, how was your day? You're like, yeah, it was really good. It was really tiring. We want you going home buzzing with energy, right? So if I know that you're an introvert, your first day at work, I can just say, why don't we just introduce you to a couple of people in the afternoon? Maybe you can just check out a couple of things and get your head into some things and contemplate it for a little bit. Day 2, a couple more people, maybe at the end of the week we'll go out for a drink or whatever it might be, and then and sort of change the order of how everyone still does the same onboarding, but just change the order of it to align to your personality. And then, all of a sudden your experience is better, the company's aligning to you better, you're going to get to the end of the first year feeling really excited, and all of those other things about performance and engagement and telling other people what a great experience it was, and all those other great things kind of flow on from there. And similar in an interview, if I'm having a conversation with you in an interview and I'm using your personality data or your skills assessment data or your aptitude data to sort of frame that conversation and just have an open chat. I know that you're kind of like this, but this role kind of needs you to act a little bit like this. Can you tell me how you've built habits around that to manage that appropriately? And then all of a sudden we're just kind of having an honest conversation, and knowing, the candidate knows whether the job suits them or not, and whether they suit the job or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because on that point, I will just bring up a question from Nicholas. But when you're talking onboarding, that actually really spoke to me, and I saw Charlotte just popped up that it's powerful stuff for her, and it spoke to her as well. Because the way you described me, absolutely, anytime I've started a new job, it has been 1 week of back-to-back meetings, whereas I'm a curious person who likes self-learning. I love meeting people, but I don't want I will zone out in a 1-hour meeting when people are telling me this is where everything is, this is how we do everything. I would rather they gave me a quick, hey, here's all the information, go ahead and explore it. So that spoke to me, and I saw that it spoke to Charlotte as well. But on that note, Nicholas, hi Nicholas, how you doing? Great to see you. Well, great to see your name pop up, mate. But curious on your experience, Peter, in terms of personality insights of candidates, whether you've seen employers adjust a role based on that person's profile, and whether there've been any particular outcomes you can recall.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think the thing that employers are getting a little bit better at is realizing that there's more than one way to skin a cat? That's not a nice saying to say either. No, with your cat in the room. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. There's just different ways to do things. And I think, if we think about hybrid working and working from home, a lot of managers are getting nervous about it because they think that staff need to be at work so I can see what they're doing and make sure everyone's working the same way. And then other businesses that are a bit more progressive go, well, let's just focus on the outcome. Like, what are we trying to achieve? And as long as we get to that outcome, let's find a way to let people work the way that they want to work. And we're seeing this, I guess, to that question specifically, we're seeing it a lot in sales roles where, there was always an archetypal salesperson. And then, leaders have started to realize there are lots of different ways to achieve sales. And as long as we still get to the target that we need to get to at the end, you might be, a naturally social person, or, and you might be, so for you, it's like get out, talk to people, network, build lots of relationships, and you still get to that same outcome. Or you might be a creative person. And so for you, it's actually better to go in, have conversations with clients, understand their needs, problem solve, come up with a solution. Both still get the sale at the end, but it's two different personality types playing to their strengths, and getting to that kind of outcome that you need at the other end. And I think the more that we can do that and just realize, like, if you're looking for a needle in a haystack and you just kind of want to hire the same person over and over again, you're going to end up in a pretty narrow space. But the more you can just say, there's lots of different people, they all do lots of things in lots of different ways. As long as we are really clear on our vision and our purpose and where we're trying to get to, let's, find a way to make this work for you. But the flip side is always, it's hard. It's really hard. It's so much harder for the manager, for the leader to have to think about all of these human needs. If everyone's approaching work differently and bringing different personalities, then it gets a lot harder. And I think that a lot of the challenges with using personality data like this is that it's just really hard not to fall back on your old habits of just having a great conversation with someone. They're like me, I'll hire them. You know that you'll get to a better outcome if you put the hard work in and think about people in a different way. But it just takes a little bit more brain power and a little bit more thinking. So it's pretty tricky. And that's kind of where the AI stuff can kind of really help to bridge the gap for leaders.
Yeah, and we'll go into that in a moment. My opinion, Nicholas, I really appreciate what you shared there in terms of adjusting the role. And I think, we need to be less when we're designing roles, and I'm very, very passionate about talent professionals being the people that design the roles with the business rather than it being designed directly by the leader. And the reason being is because I think we need to have a lot of flex in the design of that role rather than being really narrow and really prescriptive and having a list of tasks of what that role is, because a role should be able to broaden. It should have enough breadth to it that it can change and it can evolve, even though it still has the outcomes that you require from a business perspective. You want to be playing to the employee's strengths and being able to flex up that role to tap into what they love doing and giving them the opportunity to step outside of their comfort zone, to do different, programs of work or projects, or, just to be able to give them that satisfaction. And I think that plays a big part in it as well. The deeper you understand your employees and having a flexible approach to position design within your org structure, the greater the outcomes are going to be for the organization, the greater productivity, the greater engagement, less retention, less turnover, all of those wonderful things. So that would be my comment on that, Nicholas. Sorry to hijack and put my opinion in there, Pete, but,
I totally agree.
Yeah, 100%.
That's it. Yeah.
Now we're talking about, this is something that where leaders, organizations, talent teams, HR professionals are going to gather all of this data on their people. Okay, now it can be really easy to drown in data and not know what to do with it. So there's data points everywhere within an organization, particularly within a HR department. So how do we ensure that we don't drown in that data and that we're actually using it effectively to get all of those positive outcomes we've been talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. No, I'm just kidding. It's fun. It is a real challenge though. I think, getting good data and using it in the right way, it takes a bit of time. And I think, one of the first steps is just like reviewing what you've got at the moment and just making sure you're getting what you need, but also being really consistent across the business. One of the challenges that we're finding with a lot of HR teams is they've got pockets of data all across the business. So this team's done this thing and this team's done this thing, and we've got a system here for this one and it's got to plug into this system over here. And, they just don't have, there's no consistent approach across businesses. And the first step of data is always, you got to collect the right data and it's got to be consistent across everyone. Because until you can kind of get that full picture, you're in a lot of trouble. It just becomes really hard, because then you start trying to compare apples and oranges and compare two different data sources and say, well, that's kind of like this and that's kind of like this, so we can compare those two, and you end up with false information. So I think one of the main challenges is really just like, having a consistent approach, getting good quality data or getting a good quality tool that you're using, just starting to use it across the business. And the flip side of that is also that the team become familiar with it. Everyone's learnt the same sort of language. Your candidates have the same experience. Your employees have the same experience. It gets really complicated, I think, if you're using lots of different things. But then there's lots of really cool solutions that are coming out now that really, like I was saying before, around AI and machine learning and, just different tech platforms that can kind of help to consolidate a lot of that data and do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And, whether it's generating content or whether it's just, that's sort of one side of it and maybe not super helpful, but just consolidating data and giving you insights off the back of it is really helpful. And there's a lot more solutions like that coming out.
Well, then if we're talking about tech, right? So we've got all of these data points, and then if we are to tap into AI, and many people, still do feel that AI is quite robotic and it loses that human touch, I suppose. Like,
yeah.
Where do you feel that tech can really play a part in this, in getting that, I guess, storytelling out there? How can we utilize AI?
I think the trick, like we've built a few tools now into our platform, but we're building customized tools in, like, you can't just use the off the shelf tools. Like, a lot of people are talking about this, but things like ChatGPT, and any kind of data tool will give you an answer to any question that you ask it. So you put in data and ask a question, no matter what, you'll get an answer. It's 100% guaranteed. But whether it's right or wrong is a whole other question. And AI answers, well, any of those tools answer questions in a very compelling way. You believe them, they're very confident, and you just kind of go with what they're telling you. So I guess it's using the right kind of tools that aren't just plug and play, getting the right data to go into it in the first place, and then knowing what the right questions are to ask, and I guess using the right solutions, and kind of knowing what role they play. So there aren't any solutions right now that are suitable to be left alone without an expert sitting over the top of them. And like I was saying, no matter what, they'll give you an answer, but whether it's right or wrong, and we still kind of need to interpret it. And so just using all of these solutions as ways to consolidate data, give you ideas, give you inspiration, take a lot of the heavy lifting off your plate, to know that, one of the tools that we've got now is just recommended interview questions using AI. So taking the culture of the business, the position description, the CV, and the personality data, and just says, here's 5 questions you should dig into in the next interview. And they're built in one of our bespoke tools. We still review them, so a human still looks at it before it goes out to make sure that it's accurate. But it just means that it's not solving all of the problems for the HR or for the interviewer. But it just means that when they're going from interview to interview to interview, they don't all of a sudden need to come up with a whole bunch of new questions. They don't need to do all of that mind work to think about all of that stuff. They can just focus on having a great conversation. And so I think it's sort of thinking about these tools as just time savers and direct, like, things that point you in the right direction, rather than taking over your job and what you should be doing. Because we still, in all of these people interactions, it's got to be a human conversation. When we go right back to what we we're talking about at the start, personality data is about understanding humans, and and we sort of can't take that out of the mix, I don't think.
So when we've got these data points and we want to present them to upper management, like I can recall a job a little while ago, and quite naively of me presenting talent data to my CEO, and it was time to hire 20 days, volume of applications 300, gender split, and I can remember him looking at it saying, well, is that good or bad? I don't know what all this data means. Why are you sending me this report? What does it mean? How do we, if we're looking at even specifically personality insights or whatever those data points might be, how do we present it in the right way? Like, how do we actually ensure it's powerful for our CEOs or our upper leaders or our exec suite? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really complicated challenge for a lot of people. It really depends on the business and how open the leaders are to having conversations. I heard someone talking about this the other day, saying, for some of those metrics that you were just talking about, you should stop collecting them because they're misleading. Like, there's so much that goes in behind it. Time to hire might go from 20 days to 40 days. And there's so many reasons behind that you might go, well, if we stop, we shouldn't collect it anymore because it's meaningless. Like, the fact that it's gone from 20 to 40 is just going to make us look bad, and that we know why it's happened. But I guess my feeling is always, that's a good story. Like, as long as you go to your leader and the leaders and say, we've got this data, it's accurate data, it's consistent data, it's informative, it's linked to outcomes, and it's changed, and we know why, and these are the things that we're going to do to solve it at the other end, then that's a great story to take to upper leaders. And so I think we've got the power now with really good data just to get to the right information, and data delivered in the right way that's really concise and gives us the right information, but that goes beyond, this is my market research background, goes beyond data to insights and to ideas. Leaders don't want you to come with data. They want you to come with, so what? we do this with clients. We'll say, here's the personality profiles of 5 people. If we went and said, here's the profiles, good luck, that's not what we want to do. We'll say, and our recommendation is this person, or and these are the things you need to, this is going to inform your decision making, and then you can just jump to the answer at the other end. So that's what I think, that's our opportunity right now, to bridge the gap, not just TALY, but just the industry. All of this complexity that we're talking about, we can actually bridge the gap between hyper personalized insights and actual answers at the other end.
Yeah, and I think it's a trap a lot of us fall into, because we seem as an industry to be focused on presenting stats rather than presenting insights, outcomes, and even actions. Like, what we want to do with the insights that we've provided. What is the commitment that we need from you, rather than sending your numbers, right? And
and you'd hope that leaders are kind of, if you go and say it's gone up, like our time to hire has gone up, and when it's because of these reasons we're doing these things, they're like, cool, great, you're dealing with the problem. And then next month you come back and say, it didn't go down, but it's because of these reasons. Like, okay, cool. Well, what's next? Hopefully they're open enough to have that conversation, as long as you're not just going with information and not ideas.
Yeah, ideas is critical. Absolutely. Okay, so I've just had a question come up from Mike. Again, thank you so much, Mike, for always being so active here. So when you use profiling tools such as personality typing, do we run the risk of putting people into one box when they could actually fit into multiple categories or types? And if so, how can we combat that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's a little bit controversial because there are a lot of profiling tools that do put people in boxes. So I'm not sure how much I should say about it, but we don't do that at TALY. I think, that people, it's exactly what you're saying earlier, Eden. Like, you're an introvert, but you act like an extrovert sometimes. And if I do a personality, if I put you into a box and put you into an introvert box, and just, you then start thinking that you're an introvert, so you don't go out and do extroverted things. And I look at you as an introvert, so I don't invite you to do extroverted things. It can be really dangerous. Like, a lot of those kind of, just as soon as we start labeling things, then people start acting to that label. And the way that profiling or personality should be measured is really on scales and on dimensions, and knowing that in different mindsets, different situations, you can act and build habits in different areas in different ways. But you will have your natural state, like we were saying. Like, there is a place where you like to be, where you feel most comfortable. That's your personality, and that's your happy space. But you're not locked in that box all the time. And it's just, I think it's a really important thing it's a really great question. It's a really important point to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Look, before I go into the final question, just for anyone out there that's listening and watching, how can they reach out to you to learn more about TALY and learn more about personality profiling? What's the best way to connect with you, Peter?
LinkedIn is great. We're really active on LinkedIn. Just reach out. We love to hear people's stories. We're sort of early in this AI journey, as everyone else is, and we're really interested to hear what people are up to and different perspectives, and to share what we're doing as well. So reach out on LinkedIn. Would love to say hi.
Excellent. Everyone out there, please reach out. It is a really, really cool tool. I would love you to check it out. The other thing is, if you are attending ATC, I know there are still some tickets available. The Australian Talent Conference in Sydney. Peter and TALY will be presenting there. I will be there as well. So it will be a family of love. Come along and check out TALY and Peter and the team, and come and say hello to me. Remember, we have our big event coming up in October on the 4th and 6th, which is Bounce 3, the panel van, rubberband.com.au/bounce3. But finally, Peter, tell me, what advice would you give to anyone out there who is working in recruitment at the moment, working in talent at the moment? What would be your final piece of advice?
Apart from just getting involved in Rubber Band as much as they can, do you mean?
There you go.
I think I don't know. I mean, my background's in data and research, and not necessarily HR. but have been playing in the space a lot. And I think what I see working really well for people in recruitment and in talent is just to be a human. That's always my advice. It's just have good conversations. Clients want to work with people who understand their problems and feel their pain and want to get engaged. And we can be brave and try new things, and just keep those conversations going. I think that's all that matters.
That's absolutely beautiful advice. Thank you so much, Peter. It has been a delight chatting to you today. And big thank you to the audience that joined us live today. Thank you so much for all the interaction and sharing all your comments and your thoughts and arranging catch-ups with each other. It's been wonderful to see the chat box happening today. So thank you so much for joining. And Peter, we'll catch up really, really soon. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, Eden. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed getting involved.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Have a great weekend.